So basically within this first part, it's very quick instructions on how to approach identification of your major suppliers and categorization them based on risk. Next thing is within the SOC Act, there is a requirement to identify critical workers, conduct pre-employment screening, and ensure their ongoing suitability with their access to those critical assets. Often critical workers can sit as your employees of your organization. However, with the modern workforce setup, critical workers can be employees of your suppliers, of your vendors, of third parties. It can be employees of your managed service providers. And that makes this process a bit more tricky in terms of mitigating insider threat. So at this step, after we went through quickly how to look at identification and categorization of major suppliers, next thing is how to look at identification of critical workers and seeing how to link critical workers and those major suppliers. So this is 7-step critical worker identification and risk management framework, where you will see there are similarities with supply chain mapping, because at the end of the day, it's about protection of the same critical components of the same critical infrastructure assets with the same security risks. You just look at it with different lens. So when you have identified critical components and have registered them with the Department of Home Affairs, you can split them within 5 main domains as within CRMP, as within risk management program. You can have assets, systems, people, governance, supply chain. And then you can link critical components to them. Then you will, if you list security risks, or security risk events that are relevant to those critical components or critical functions, you will be able to see what roles, what potential critical workers have access or have ability to influence through different ways on those critical functions. So this list will give you indication of potential critical workers. To identify whether they're critical workers or not, we put together 7 criteria for identifying critical workers. It's about direct access or control of a critical component, which can be physical, cyber, or operational. It is about decision-making authority over budgets, over contracts, over policies, more around soft power within this space.
And then we have privileged access to sensitive information, which can include, of course, business critical data. We have dependency and irreplaceability, where the absence of the person in the role creates a single point of failure, which of course also leads to your alternate personnel for that role. And do you treat them as critical in that role as well? External influence, where a third party or a managed service provider and so on has privileged access or contractual leverage. Emergency and incident authority, where the role is empowered to act during crisis, and also regulatory and compliance interface, where the role manages mandated reporting and so on in terms of liaison with government. So these are what we believe the most appropriate criteria. And of course, the roles and hence the people that might match these criteria may be employees, or they may be contractors or some other category of person.
So when you identified your potential critical workers and went through 7 criteria, that will help you to put together a list of critical workers. When you have a list of your critical workers, you will be able to see more critical positions. You will be able to see whether those critical positions are actually sit with an employee of managed service provider or vendor or third party. That will give you a snapshot of that group.
And whilst this might look like a lot of things to do, quite frankly, though, by going through this process, you are likely to minimize the number of critical workers that are identified, and that's a great place to be. The less you have, the better.
And probably one thing to add, if you're going through supply chain mapping process or critical work identification process, keep in mind their interdependency, interconnectedness, that when you're doing one, you can do part of another and they depend on each other. And at the end of the day, it requires you more or less the same stakeholder group, multidisciplinary working group, that will sit together with an organization and they will come with different knowledge bases, whether it's the knowledge around your suppliers, whether it's the knowledge around your critical components or security risks or your critical workers or assurance. You need this, and governance, you need this group to work together to come up with the list of major suppliers, to come up with a list of critical workers and see the linkage.